coming out tonight. And I'm just so excited. We're looking forward. Cheri was here 3 years ago, almost to the date. It was in February. And we were so blessed to have Cheri. We wanted to have her back again. And I'm just curious, just for funds, how did you hear about tonight's meeting with Cheri? How many of you saw a flyer? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you got a personal invitation from someone? Raise your hand. Oh. How many of you heard it on Shine Radio? Okay. So I guess there's a lot of different ways in which we heard about tonight. Now, Cheri will be speaking tonight, and she'll be speaking tomorrow. We're going to do 11 o'clock. There's going to be kind of a church service, a worship service, where Cheri is the main speaker. We're going to have free lunch afterwards, and then Cheri will speak again at 2 o'clock. So we get 3 opportunities to hear Cheri speak. So I hope you can join us for all of it. And we'll talk more about, there's going to be a program using Cheri's material that's going to start next Thursday night. You'll be invited to come and back and join us for that. But we'll share some more about that tomorrow. But just know that all of you are invited. Why don't we go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then we'll turn the time over to Cheri. Let's pray. God in heaven, we are giving you permission to show up, and we're praying for clarity. We're praying for healing. We're giving you permission to search our hearts. And we're just looking forward to what you're going to do by us being here tonight. We just believe there's a blessing to be had by being here. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for Cheri. Speak through her. Give her the confidence and clarity to do that. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Cheri.
Amen. I got one. Well, hello. I'm always nervous the first night. I don't know if you've ever heard me speak. I always say that. The first night, I have no idea who you are. Some of you have no idea who I am. And so it's always a little bit scary for me. But I want to start with who I am, just so that when we start the weekend, we can kind of get an idea of who I am and why I'm passionate about that. And I was trying to figure out a story to start with, because I love stories. I love to start with stories. And so I want to tell you, I got a call from my sister a few months ago. And the call was, it's probably about 5 months ago, and the call was, I know you're going to hate me for this. And my sister's a little meth addict. I haven't hated her over the years. And so I told her, I said, I probably won't hate you. I mean, I haven't hated you over the years. And she's done some pretty crazy stuff. Raise your hand if you have crazy family members. So she's done some pretty crazy stuff. And so I said, I'm not going to hate you. And she said, no, I think you're going to hate me for this. And I said, just say it. I promise you, I'm not going to hate you. And she said, I'm just afraid. And I said, Joni, just say it. And she says, well, Mom had a sore back. And I said, yeah? And so I gave her a little fentanyl. I said, you what? I gave her a little fentanyl, and she's been totally out for 15 hours. What do I do? And so I said, you didn't take her into the emergency room? And she said, no. Why would I do that? That's stupid. And I'm thinking, okay, so where's she at right now? What's happening right now? And she said, well, we tried to get her up, and my boyfriend's on one side, I'm on the other side, and we're trying to get her to walk, but she's not walking really well, and she's making no sense at all. And I said, can I call you back? Because you don't want to, I just want to scream at someone, right? So I hang up the phone, and I'm in another state, so I'm trying to find somebody in that state that lives close enough to my mom that can get some Narcan and get it over there, or something to counteract this fentanyl. So I finally found someone, and I said, you got to go over right now. You got to give her this. And they're like, yeah. So get in the car. They drive all the way over there, and they give my mom some Narcan. And has anybody seen how fast you come out of opiates with that? I mean, it literally brings you out. So I'm on the phone, still listening to the kind of internal dialogue that's happening in the living room. And my mom says, what did you guys do? I was having a great time. I was relaxed. I'm like, so they said, well, Cheri said, well, why did you call Cheri? So I have a whole family of druggies that actually, even in an overdose, will get mad at you if you intervene. So at the point where they took the Narcan, then my mom said, we need to call someone because I feel flushed. So now she wants to go to the emergency room. So they called the EMTs. They came over, and I'm now listening to EMTs intervene with my mom, and they're saying, I think we would have done the same thing, if you were out 15 hours and having that kind of struggle. And so she says, I don't think it was that big of a deal, but my daughter, Cheri, always overreacts. So that is kind of my family. But the weirdest thing that happened during that overdose is my mom came out of it, and within a couple of days, I had to fly in because I was just afraid. Sometimes when you have an overdose like that, you can get brain injury and not even know it. Like you can come out, but you still have a brain injury. And I thought she did have it. Her handwriting changed, some other things changed. And I walked in the house after flying in, and my mom said, weren't you like my favorite child? And I thought, well, no, you tried to self-abort me a number of times. You know what I mean? From birth, I have not been your favorite. But it was really weird because I didn't know what to say. Like, you're my favorite, right? And I thought, God, what do I say? And I just smiled. And she just assumed I was her favorite child. And for the next month, she treated me like that until she remembered I was absolutely not her favorite child. But it was just kind of a weird thing. So my family has got all of this stuff and is in and out of some pretty intense addictions. And like I said, for people that don't know, raise your hand if you don't know me or the story. Okay, so I'm gonna tell it because when somebody says, why do you always tell the story? I am so proud of this story. I've been in 45 years in recovery. My life is amazing because of that. And so the journey is, to me, very exciting. But my mom was 14 when she had me. And I was her second child. And my mom ended up in high school when she was 12, because she was very smart. My dad was 15 and alcoholic. Anybody drink in high school? So my dad was already drinking, already alcoholic, and when he saw this cute little 12-year-old ninth grader, he got her drunk, slept with her, and she got pregnant. And so I don't know why they decided to let them get married and have this child and that kind of stuff. My mom believed, like a lot of girls believe, that this child is going to change my whole life. Everything's going to be good. And so the first part of their living together and the first part of that felt probably like setting up a dollhouse. And I mean, it was just fun. And my dad quit school. He was 15. But he had to quit school because now he's got a family, right? So he's quit school, got a job. And my dad was alcoholic. And he didn't like people telling him what to do. So just pretend you're my dad's boss. And you told him what to do, and he just went up and said, excuse me, are you talking to me? And literally grabbed him by the throat and slammed him down. Would you think he kept his job? No. So my dad would just get so mad if somebody disrespected him. Like, you know what, I know you're the boss, but you need to show some respect here. And so he was just like that. So when he got fired, he would come home to my mom and literally grab her by the hair and slam her face into something. Like he was, if it wasn't for you, I would not have to be doing this. I would not have to be getting a job. I would not have to be struggling the way I am. And so he would beat her up. And when my sister was 2 months old, my mom found out that she was pregnant again. And she just said, I'm not doing this again. And she tried to self-abort. Abortions were not legal at that time. I'm kind of grateful for that. I don't want to get into any argument about that, but I like being here. But she tried to self-abort. She took pills, she took hot baths, she would jump on stuff, like she would literally jump on things and hit her stomach, hoping that would work. She put coat hangers up inside of her trying to get the puncture of the sack that I was in, but all that did was cut her up, and I was stillborn. And she just said, I could not even deal with that. Even in the hospital, I could not. I didn't want to look at you when they said, you want to hold your baby? No. My dad, by this time, was beating her, and he was really, from what she says, he was really difficult to live with in every way. The doctors came in and said, you have to name her. My mom said no. And what she said later on in my life is, I was afraid that if I named you, I would have to take you home, right? And so she was just afraid of that. She was watching at that time, all the kind of pregnancy women were kind of in the same room. I mean, it wasn't that you had your own room. And they were watching TV. And don't ask me what year this is, but it was the first year that TVs were allowed in the hospital. Or maybe it was the first year TVs were invented. I don't even know. But she was watching TV, and she was watching a series about a tugboat, a gambling boat called the Cheryl Ann, and she said, just name her that, right? And my friend, when I told the story, the creative director for our nonprofit said, Cheri, I don't think TVs were in the hospitals the year you were born. So she said, I'll check it out. And she checked it out. They were not only in the hospital the year I was born, that was the first year they were allowed in, or that they were in. And on Facebook, there's a whole Facebook page on kids that were named after that tugboat. I thought that was kind of a funny thing. But anyhow, so I was named after the tugboat. My mom said she had to take me home from the hospital. She would sit in the hall listening to me scream in the bedroom, and she would cry sitting in the hallway and afraid, if I go in there, my fear is I'm going to beat you. Like, I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to hold you. I didn't want to nurture you. My dad was getting worse. Now she has 2 babies, and she's 14, 15 years old. And she said it just got more and more intense. My mom had 5 kids before she was in her early 20s, so she just had one after another after another. I remember being really little, and I don't know, I just wanted her to touch me. Can I sit next to you? Will you touch me? And she would just say stuff like, why do you always need attention? Like, why are you always hanging on me? And I remember being tiny and saying, I don't know. Like, I don't know, but I just wanted to cry all the time. I just wanted to desperately sit next to her. I wanted to be touched by anybody except for my father, who was molesting me since I was 3 months old. So if I got attention from my dad, I would get molested. If I got attention from my mom, she would just be angry. And so our household was really, man, I just don't even know the word, because I want to say difficult, but that is, it was just horrendous. I remember just always wanting someone to help, like, please help me. To this day, I have people that will let me sit next to them. But to this day, that's still, I feel privileged when somebody says you can come to my house or you can sit next to me. I still don't take it for granted, because I feel privileged. But my mom got worse. My first suicide attempt, I think I was 3, just drank something under the sink. It didn't do anything. And the next attempt, well, let me just say, I had an aunt, and I know for some of you have heard the story, but it is a big part of the story, is I had an aunt that went to my grandmother's every Christmas. And every Christmas I saw her, and she was so funny. Her son was in the Little Rascals. Does anybody know that? So her son was in the Little Rascals. His name is George Billings, if you want to look that up. He was actually in 63 films as a child star. He played with W.C. Fields and Mae West. And so when they came over to my grandmother's for Christmas, it was always a story. Like, they always had these really fun stories. And my aunt, I hope I got that from her. She was just always bigger than life. I mean, She was just amazing. But I'd go to my grandma's house. I was really little. And I think the first time she did this, I was really little, like 4, maybe 5. And she said, "Look at you. You are so beautiful." And she touched my face. I wanted that my whole life. I just started crying. I literally started crying. And I think it surprised her, and she just swept me up and held me. I became her favorite. And she would tell me all these stories. I mean, all these stories. And like I said, I only saw her once a year, but when I saw her, she would almost be waiting for me. And she would be waiting for me, and she would say, oh, you got to help me on this. She would tell me a joke, and the joke was, everything she said, I had to say pea soup. So what'd you have for breakfast? What'd you have for lunch? What'd you have for dinner? What'd you do all night? And as a little kid, I laughed my head off. I thought that was the funniest thing. And she said it every time. That was the first thing she said to me every year. And my sisters and brothers would say, "Oh, that's so stupid." And we would laugh even harder because they were saying, "That's lame, that's stupid." And we would just laugh our heads off. But she was very, very funny. And she, like I said, she would joke, she would tell me stories. Her son, again, George, would tell me a bunch of stuff because he was doing all this really cool stuff. And I just adored them. In every picture for Christmas at my grandmother's, I was the cutest little thing sitting right next to her because I just wanted to be as close as possible. I felt loved. I felt like I could survive the year without seeing her and that it would be okay. And I remember just really feeling like, I don't know if anybody has felt like somebody in their life has saved their life. I just felt like she actually saved my life. When I was 8 years old, I went over. I was excited to see her. I got out of the car, and I realized her car wasn't there, which was very unusual. And I said, "Where's Annie Kay's car?" And my mom said, "Come over here." And she was really kind of upset. And she said, "Your aunt is dead, and I don't want you crying because you're going to upset your grandmother." And I remember thinking, I don't know what dead is. No, all I knew is the way she said it, I would probably not see her again. And I said, what does that mean? And I started crying, and she just told me to stay outside until I was done crying. And I just have to say, I didn't know why she did that, but I want you to raise your hand if you get this next part. There was a time that if anybody in your family committed suicide, nobody talked about it at all. Raise your hand if you know that's true. So my aunt was bipolar. I didn't know that. And she had killed herself during a depression. If you are bipolar, you don't have to raise your hand, but don't make a decision during a depression because somebody loves you and it's a big deal. But she killed herself. And I remember staying outside and just weeping, just like I couldn't figure out, like, for one, how am I going to get over this? How am I going to get back up again? How am I going to, like, I don't have anybody that I know could just hold me right now. I just want to be held right now. And I sat outside, right by this kind of garden area, and I was just trying to stop. And I remember I wanted to stop crying because it's Christmas. Everybody is inside celebrating Christmas, and I couldn't go inside until I stopped crying. So I tried something, and I would just start crying again. And all of a sudden, it was a kind of a cloudy day, and the clouds kind of parted. And you know how the sun kind of filters through the clouds? I heard, not a voice, but I heard in my head, "What did you have for breakfast?" And I just knew, and I think that was God himself, but I just knew that things were going to be all right. And I just took a breath, and I stopped crying, went inside. We did Christmas, and I got home, and I thought, I just can't live without her. And so I was going to kill myself. And at 8 years old, I drank something under the sink at 3. That didn't work. But at 8 years old, I don't think I understood anything. And so I climbed up on my house. And it took forever to climb up on my house. My house was very tiny. So it was one story. So I climbed up on the roof, and I was just going to jump off onto the driveway. But I don't like pain at all, so I put a mattress down. So when I jumped off, I landed on this mattress and literally didn't even get a scratch. I'm laying on the mattress, and I think my mom or somebody comes out and says, "What are you doing? Go play." And I thought, okay. Like, I just remember like it was nothing. I was just laying on the mattress, and then I ran off to play. And within a few months, I end up with this limp. It was a pretty significant limp. And it got worse, and my mom had, during that whole few years, I think from the time I was 4 to I was 8, she had kicked my dad out, moved her boyfriend in, who was really nice guy, jazz singer, alcoholic. So he had the addictions, but he didn't beat her and he didn't molest us. So, but he was living there, and I kept getting worse as far as this limp goes. And finally, my mom has to take me to the doctors. And they do an x-ray, and let me know if you've ever heard of this. I ended up getting diagnosed with what's called Legg-Perthes disease. Anybody? I could be in a whole room of medical staff, and I get the same reaction. So Legg-Perthes is a disease that some of your joints, like the sockets or balls of your joints, stay like a sponge, and other ones progressively get harder. I mean, you're born like a sponge. That's how you get out of the birth canal, right? And then your bones get harder. Well, my hip didn't had the Legg-Perthes disease in it, so they said you have to go to Children's Hospital and you have to see what they're going to do. At the time, what they did with kids with Legg-Perthes is they put them in a total body cast from their neck all the way down. Like it was just so they don't want you to move anything, because that spongy joint will get more and more tore up the more you move. That year was the first year they transitioned from a total body cast to braces and crutches, right? So they put this brace on you and crutches. And when I got there, it was the weirdest thing. Is anybody in the medical field? I love you guys. I mean, I just love you. When I got there, what was so cool to me is the doctor called me by my name and asked me if I understood what he meant. And I was shocked, like nobody had ever, I just didn't have people do that to me. And very kind, very, explaining things that I would understand, and said that I would have to come to Children's Hospital in Long Beach 3 times a week for physical therapy. And I thought, wait, I get out of school? That's the only thing I was thinking. And I said, what do you do in physical therapy? You just swim in this swimming pool. And I think, wait, I get out of school to go swimming in this pool. I think I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. And I remember just thinking, that is the weirdest thing. I mean, who does that? And so the first day I get into this physical therapy with these other kids, and some of the kids were hydrocephalic, and some kids were obvious disabilities. And I literally had this brace on that I could twist it and bend my leg, or I can keep it locked and walk. It had a rubber thing on the bottom, and I had crutches, right? But I looked normal, right? So when I got to Children's Hospital, I would take that off and run in the pool and just jump in. But the first time I ran in the pool, I thought, wait, because there was this cool thing that was like, it just was this big metal thing, and it just went over the water and then lowered into the water. And I thought, what am I walking down steps for? I'd like to get on that. And the nurse said, well, you have legs. And I thought, well, I don't think you should hold that against me. I was like what? I think I should be able to get on that. And so one of the kids that I was doing physical therapy with, he said, I think she should too. So they had a vote. And the kids voted that I got to get on this hydraulic thing and get lowered in the pool. So I would take everything off, run out to that, and just be ready. Like, go ahead, And the kids were so fun. They were, I felt normal. They physically looked a mess, but most of them were very normal, very funny. The nurses were so just kind. even when they would do range of motion with my leg, they would make sure that I was okay with that. They would make sure that I was okay to be touched. And I remember just feeling like, can I just live here? Like, I just want to live here. They would call me by my name. They would laugh and joke. And one kid in particular I just loved. He was very cheeky. And he came up and he said, excuse me, but would you like to race across the pool? And I said, no, thank you. Are you chicken? I said, I'm not chicken. I'm not racing you. And I remember just he would not let up. And finally he said, like, if you're not chicken, why don't you race me? And I thought, I don't want to be mean or anything, but you don't have any arms. And he had no arms. He just had these fingers kind of that stuck out of his shoulder. And I thought, I'm not nice, and I'm not giving you a head start. I remember thinking, I know he's probably thinking I'm just going to let him win. I was not like, I was a very competitive little kid, right? And so he says, well, race me. And I said, okay. So we get in the water, and I'm just thinking that I'm just going to beat him, and it's just going to be a sad thing. But he's like a little dolphin. And he beat me before I even made one lap. He's already done. And I remember thinking that was the funniest thing. I laughed my head off. And the next new kid that came in, he said, hey, want to race across the pool? And we all laughed because we knew that he was just going to beat them. But I remember thinking that all of the depression, all of the stuff that I kind of drug with, that I dragged behind me most of my life, just felt normal there. The staff felt normal. The kids were normal. I went 3 times a week. When I got to school, I had braces and crutches. Please answer this. Do you think kids were kind? They were not. Like right before I got braces and crutches, they didn't even pay attention to me. I walk in with braces and crutches and somebody trips me. And I'm thinking, that is not right. Like, what is up with that? And I remember thinking, I got to figure something out because I was getting teased. I was getting tripped. I was getting, called all kinds of stuff, gimp and all that kind of stuff. And so I saw this hallway, and I thought, okay, so I kind of ran, and I said that the brace has a little rubber thing on the bottom so you don't trip or slip. And so I hit that. I hit both crutches at the same time, and I pole vaulted myself up about 20, 25 feet. And it may not have been that much, but when I was little, it felt like it was 100 yards, right? And so I ended up, and then I landed, right? And one kid said, hey, I'd like to do that. And I said, how much money do you have? And so I started renting out my braces and crutches for kids' lunch money. So I had this little business, so I felt like I never had to wear them. I would rent them out to you as soon as I got to school. I didn't get teased much. And it was like a win-win situation, other than I had a total hip replacement pretty early. But anyhow, so that time of my life, even though it sounded like it was pretty tough with the hospital and braces and all that stuff, it actually saved my life. Child Protective Services would come to the house frequently to try to get us out of the house. And please raise your hand if you recognize this house. Like the house in the neighborhood where nobody mows the lawn. Everything's filthy. Our house was that house. So you would drive down our street, and literally our house was a house that nobody took care of. They didn't take care of the kids, but they also didn't take care of the house. Even the windows that we had in the house were these little windows that you could kind of wind up or wind down. And they were filthy, some were broken. When you went into my mom's bathroom, you could stick to the floor. The sink busted in the bathroom. We had a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. And the sink busted and was fixed 13 years later. So, it was filthy. If we brushed our teeth, we brushed our teeth in the bathtub. We were not forced to brush our teeth. But anyhow, so Child Protective Services would come in and just see if we were safe or if we needed to be removed. I'm not sure why we were not removed. I have no idea to this day, because I'm now in the medical field. To this day, it just surprises me that we were not taken out. But we were not, and it just, I think, got worse. My dad would come visit every year, Father's Day or Christmas, take us, molest us, and bring us home. It was almost like a survival thing. I remember even one time, and I was 6 years old, was watching TV. Everybody remember the TV that sat on the ground? I feel like 1,000 years old when I talk about any of this. But anyhow, the TV that sat on the ground, and I was 6. And when my parents watched TV, we were just brought into the room, and we were supposed to not say much and watch TV. That's in our house. It was a small house. Everybody just watched. So I'm 6 years old, and I'm in front of the TV like this, but sitting on the ground. And the program that was on was called The Bad Seed. Has anybody seen that? The Bad Seed was a little blonde girl, very cute, that killed everybody. Like, even the landlord one time said, "Hey, when I die, you can have my parakeet." And I wanted to scream. I'm watching this saying, "Don't tell her that, because you're going to die tonight." And literally, she killed the landlord, got the parakeet. She killed a janitor that found out that she killed a little boy at school because he got a medal that she thought was hers. And so this kid, and I remember just sitting the whole time and just wanting someone to rescue me. I don't want to see this. I am so afraid. And I remember just feeling so afraid. At the end of the movie, the mother finally decided she's going to kill the girl and then commit suicide, right? Which for a kid at 6 years old, even that, so frightening. I mean, it was so frightening. And while I was trying to process this murder-suicide thing that was going to happen, my mom simply said, "You're the bad seed." And all my siblings just started laughing. And I remember thinking that's why you don't love me. And I just felt that so strong. That's why I'm not lovable. That's why all this has happened. And I remember feeling that way until I processed it in therapy at 30-something years old. So I remembered, and my whole life just changed. Nobody can find out that I'm just a bad seed. I may look like a normal person, but I am a bad seed. And I remember that everything was changing at that point. My mom, because she was having to take me to the hospital with this leg thing, at one time, well, I thought it was going to be good. I thought because she had to drive me there 3 times a week, that she's actually going to find out that I'm lovable, and she's going to love me, right? And that was my fantasy, I think, about that whole thing. And then there was a little pancake house across the street from Children's Hospital. And if we got there too early, she would just take us in there. And at my house, we didn't eat at a table. We didn't eat lunch or dinner or breakfast together. It was like whatever. I mean, we just didn't do that. So going to a restaurant with my mom and eating was so special. But the first, second, third time, I realized that she would get really irritable if I took too long to order. And I didn't know how to do it. I just didn't know how to do it. And I remember the more irritable she got, the more I thought maybe I'm going to cause her not to love me, and I would get stressed, and it would be even worse. So I thought, oh, it's a pancake house. So I'll just order pancakes. And my mom said at one time, I ordered pancakes, and she said, "You know, you chew just like a cow." And I thought, oh, I'm sorry. I won't chew. I'll just swallow it, right? I just won't. So I ended up ordering pancakes, trying not to chew, and trying not to irritate my mom. Like, if she's going to love me, if this is going to be where we connect, I just want to do everything right. And at one point, we were in the restaurant, and she said, "You know, this has taken a lot of time away from the rest of the kids, and so we're going to send you to live in Canada." And I thought, no. You know, if you send me to live in Canada, you will forget me. I can't go. I'll do everything. I'll do all the chores. I won't do anything wrong. I remember all that bargaining thing. Please don't send me away. And she said, we've already decided we've worked out, you're going to go to Canada to stay with an aunt that lives there. And my mom was born there, so a lot of her relatives are there. And I tried everything. I mean, I literally tried everything. I will be perfect. And how many kids could do that? I mean, I can't do that. So, but I would be perfect. And so she sent me to Canada. And my aunt was, I thought she was 1,000 years old. She was diabetic. She had a dog that looked like a pig. It was just this huge thing. And I found out shortly after living there is every time she wanted to cheat on her diet, she fed her dog. I mean, so it was like the dog got all the sweets but got bigger and bigger. And my aunt, when I walked in her house, she had this crosses all over her house with this dead guy on it. And I thought, hey, who's the dead guy? And she said, oh, that's God. And I thought, oh, great. I just remember thinking, if that's God, what good is he to anybody? You know, he's a dead guy hanging on a cross in my aunt's house, you know. And I never did ask her about it. I just remember thinking that I was just so discouraged about that. My aunt tried to be nice. She tried to pray. I screamed at her a lot, like, this is kidnapping. You cannot keep me here. And I remember I'm 10. She sent me back when I was 11. I'm young. And I'm just screaming at her, like, you can't keep me here. My mom is going to forget me. I need to go back home. And finally, after about a year, I figured out if I didn't talk at all, they'd have to send me back. So I didn't talk in school. I didn't talk at my aunt's house. Probably the only one I talked to was a girl next door, my same age, until she got tickets to the Monkees concert and didn't take me. So I stopped talking to her. I'm like, who does that? I'm your best friend. But I remember I stopped talking, and the counselor at school, or one of the teachers at school, said, you need to send her home. I got sent home, which I thought was going to be perfect, because I would just be good. And my mom's boyfriend decided to stop drinking. And has anybody had an alcoholic parent? So what's really tough is he stopped drinking, and if he stops drinking, he literally can't brush his teeth, take a drink of water. He gets tremors really bad. And so he stopped drinking when I was coming home. I'm not sure why. It probably was that he was doing that for me, but it was horrible. And I got home, and my friend from down the street came over because I was home, and we were walking on the top of a fence that went along our driveway. And it was just 2 pieces of wood with cement blocks that held them up. And she was walking on that, or I was walking on that. I don't even know which one of us did it. But one of the cement blocks was already kind of cracked and stuff, and the weight of us walking on it broke the fence. And so my stepdad, or my mom's boyfriend, just came in, saw the fence, and started screaming. And he said the happiest times of our life was when you were gone, and we do not want you back here. And I remember standing there thinking, I believe him. I don't think he wants me back here. I don't think they want me back here. But I still couldn't tell you at all what I've done wrong in my life. Like, what did I do wrong? And so I ran in the bedroom. I'm crying. My girlfriend's saying, you know how Mac is. He's just drunk. He doesn't mean it. And I thought for the first time in my life, I knew that he did mean it. And I had heard in my head, raise your hand if you've ever heard this, that the reason people do drugs and alcohol is they don't want to deal with their problems. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to find me some drugs, right? Because I don't want to deal with any of this. And I'm 11 years old, and I found a number of people that would give me as much as I wanted at any time. Do you think they were safe? And so I don't, at that time, I didn't even realize that how unsafe somebody is that gives drugs to an 11-year-old. But I ended up getting strung out. The first drug they gave me was cannabinol. I went from cannabinol to cocaine to heroin, and was pregnant by the time I was 12. And by then, the only thing I knew is when I took my first drug, 20 minutes later, I didn't want to kill myself. And I didn't want to kill you. Do you know what I mean? So I thought it was a win-win situation. It was the first time in my life that I thought I could probably survive as long as I stayed high. And so I got pregnant. My mom said I should get married, just like her parents said to her. And the person that took responsibility for the pregnancy was a guy in the Navy. I'm sorry to say this, I'm always sorry to say this. I don't even know who the father was. He just took responsibility. And so we were going to get married. By the time I was 8.5 months pregnant, I weighed 104 pounds. So you just got to just picture that. I was tiny. I don't think most people would have really been able to tell I was pregnant. And I was smoking tons of cigarettes and doing tons of drugs. And so by the time we were going to Mexico to get married, and I don't even think it's legal in Mexico to marry children, but he was, I think, 23 or something. I was 12 by that time. And so we were on our way, or we were starting to leave for the trip, and I started having labor pains. They had to take me to the hospital. Even in the hospital at first, they did not think I was pregnant. You know, just the fact that we're going, I think we're going to deliver. My water broke. I had twins. I had a boy and a girl. They were, you could lay them in your hand. I mean, they were tiny. And I remember believing what every abused kid believes, is that I will finally have somebody to love. I'm going to be the best parent ever. I'm going to be such a good mom. And you couldn't have said, like, even the doctor came in one time, and the boy was stillborn, and the girl lived for 8 hours. And he came in, and he said, "Do you know that you did this? You killed them." And I said to him, "That's not true. That's a lie. I was going to be a great mom." And I remember not having any sense that the drugs I was taking was damaging and the cigarettes I was smoking was damaging. I had no idea at the time that cigarette smoking is more damaging than cocaine to fetuses. So I had no idea. I just remember thinking that that was a lie. And when the girl died, so they, within 8 hours, both of them had died. And I just remember feeling depression, maybe for the first time, just feeling that really dark cloud that comes over you. And my mom came in, and I said I could probably just go home now. And she said, no, you need to still get married, right? And I thought, but I just want to come home. And it was clear that that wasn't an option. So I got married. I stayed at his mother's house when he went overseas, because he was in the Navy. And do you think his mom liked me? I was a 12-year-old drug addict that just ruined her son's life. And again, I promise you, at that time, I didn't get that. Like, I didn't get that. I just thought, what is, I don't have two heads, what's wrong? And I remember thinking that, what's wrong? And so she tried to be kind, but she really didn't like the fact that she had to invite me to eat with her other children. I was younger than her youngest child, married to her oldest child. And so she was always, like, she would come in the room and just kind of shake, like, clearly not wanting me there. And so I ended up running away, because I am an adult. I don't have to be here. And what people said is, you're an adult now, and I don't have to be in a house where somebody doesn't want me. So I ran away, ended up in Los Angeles. So I was 13 years old and ended up in Los Angeles. A child in Los Angeles on the streets as a runaway gets picked up within 24 hours. They are used for however long they can be used, and they are funneled into industries that are too dark to even mention. And when I ended up on the streets in LA, there were probably about 80,000 kids like me on the streets. And has anybody been to LA? I just want to say something that most people don't get is, why don't we see them if there's that many? Does that make sense? And I just want to answer that for you. You don't see them because they're not seeable until they're strung out or crazy and not usable. Then they end up on the street and you see them. They're usually a little bit older. And so you don't see kids because kids are moved around all the time. And so the next few years, I was on the streets. And I may go into some of the stories I'll just go into one story. I was, at one time, well, maybe not that story, sorry. I'm like, so funneled into all those things. So at one time, I remember a biker came up and said, do you want to go camping? And has anybody been camping? I remember my mom's boyfriend smoking some weed. We should go camping sometime. It is so fun. But we never did. They were just always stoned. But he would have the best stories about camping and being out and just fun and sitting around campfires and just having all that. He would have the best stories. But literally, we never went. So when this biker said, do you want to go camping? I thought, yes, I absolutely want to go camping. And so he gave me some drugs. I got on the back of a Harley. There was a long story before then, but it would just bore you. But anyhow, so I got on the back of this Harley, and we went up to Lake Elsinore. And there were about 300 other bikers, and they were doing initiations for new members, right? And so they took 3 girls from the street to use them in this initiation process. I had no idea what that meant. So we got there. There was a number of people over here, and they were all partying. And I got off the bike and started to walk away. And this guy that I was on the bike with said, excuse me, but did I tell you you could walk away from me? And I said, did I ask you? And I'm like, that's crazy. I don't even know you. And I remember not even getting that out before getting hit in the face. I got hit in the face. I fell against a tree or got slammed against a tree and slid down. And I was so furious. I remember being angry about everything in my life at that moment. Like, I don't even know this fool. I don't even know. I don't know you at all. And so I got up. I was 14 by this time. I got up and hit him in the face. He was 38 and sergeant of arms in a group called the Hessians. And I remember when I hit him, he just kind of laughed, and I was furious about that. Like, what are you laughing about? And he hit me again. I hit the same tree, and now everybody's laughing because I just hit that tree again. And I got up and hit him again. He hit me again. I hit the same tree. Everybody's laughing. I am furious. I got up and tried to hit him with everything I had. He hit me again, and I felt my teeth come out. My nose broke, and I was laying on the ground. And when you have facial injuries, there was a lot of blood. And so I was literally just with my tongue trying to figure out, man, I think I lost some teeth. And so I'm very smart, so I laid down. I didn't get up again. So he came up and he said, man, I think you're really gutsy. I like that. I'd like you to be my old lady. And I said, are you asking me out? Because I'm thinking no. You know, and I remember just thinking, it was like the Twilight Zone. You want me to be your girlfriend because I can get punched in the face? And I just wanted to say no, you know? And he said, oh, that wasn't a question. You are now my property. And so the only reason I think that I survived that weekend, and not survived well, but survived that weekend, is because I was his personal property. I was kept there for a couple weeks before I actually escaped, and the only reason I escaped was his girlfriend actually didn't like me there. I wonder why that is. But she didn't like me there and helped me to get out of there. And I remember just everything on the street. I learned that the rules are different. Everything is different. And I learned what they were. If I met pastors, it was because they had a darker addiction. If I met even police officers, a lot of times it was the same. So I just learned not to trust anybody. And by the time I was 23, I remember being so done. Like, I was so done. And I got into a little bit of a jam with a drug deal that went bad. And some money, $11,000, was missing. The person that owned the money and the drugs was an attorney out of Newport Beach, and he thought I did it, so he sent someone over to get the money back from me. And so the person came over and put a gun to my face and literally just said, you know, I'm going to blow your head off and nobody steals from me, and na. And I remember just feeling for a moment like, thank you so much. I've been trying to kill myself my whole life. So go ahead. And he said, are you crazy? I'm like, you got a gun to my face. I mean, who's crazy? And I remember wanting to say to him, are you a little girl? Do you want some help? Like, he was not going to pull the trigger. And then I realized he's just trying to scare me. And I've said this 1,000 times, but at that moment, my next breath scared me. Please pull the trigger. And he said, you're crazy, and I want my money in a week, and if you don't have it, I'm going to come back and blow your head off. And I even remember just screaming, you're not going to blow anybody's head off, as I would be dead. I mean, get out of here. Like, I just was so angry. And so after he leaves, I have to breathe again. I have to take another step. And I remember feeling like I don't want to breathe again. I don't want to take another step. I don't want to do this. And I don't know if anybody's had times like that, but I had been 10 years on the street being abused in ways that I can't even share. And I was done. I was just done. And I had no place to go. I can't go back to my family's house. The abuse is different, for sure. But I can't go back there. I don't fit anywhere. I'm 100 pounds. I'm strung out on heroin. I have 42 warrants for my arrest. And I'm a mess. I'm a mess. By this time, I even felt like I was functionally illiterate. I mean, I probably had reading skills that I could pull back from my school days, but I mean, it's been a long time. And I thought, I'm just going to kill myself. And the thought came to my head, go home. Who thinks that? Like, so I thought, I thought, okay, like maybe I'll go home and my mom will say, I'm sorry. I do love you. How are you doing? So I walk in, I am literally a wreck, and they said, how are you doing? And what do you think I said? Fine. I don't know why we do that, but I've heard 1,000 addicts do that since I've been in the field or more. But I just said, fine. Just got back from San Francisco, because that's where our last drug deal was, and on vacation. And I came in and sat down. The house was dark. The house was filthy. My mom's boyfriend was sitting watching a football game, smoking some weed. My mom was just there. Everything was dark. And I remember just saying this was probably not a good idea. And someone said, I can't remember if it was my mom or her boyfriend, said, we're really proud of you. And I just remember thinking, what are you proud about? And they said, we're just proud that you never came home and asked for money. And I remember thinking, I was 12. I was 13. I was a baby. And you're proud that I didn't ask you for money? It was like somebody was taking the air away from me, and I couldn't hardly even breathe. And so I said, this has been a nice visit. I need to go. And I started to walk towards the door, and my mom said, I just want you to know that I went back to school since the last time I saw you. And I thought, are you kidding me? She's married to my dad, who's a pedophile, and now with my stepdad, who's alcoholic. I mean, we call him stepdad, her boyfriend, who's alcoholic. All the kids are a mess, and you went back to school. And for that moment, I remember being so proud of her, like, I'm so proud of you. And I said, hey, what did you take in school? And she said, social work. I said, I can't even hear you say that. I said, you're taking social work? And you know the crimes where somebody's been stabbed like 300 times? I just understood that crime. Like, in that moment, I thought, I'm glad I don't have a weapon, because I wanted to kill her in every single way. I have never been touched by you. You have never loved me, and you're going to go to school to teach some other kids how to be loved? I just I couldn't even get it. And I remember, and please raise your hand if you understand this one. In my day and age, nobody talked back to their parents. And so I didn't say a word. I just said, good luck with that. Like, what do you say? But the whole inside, I just wanted to scream. I wanted to throw myself in front of a train. I do not want to live here. I don't want to be here. This world is not kind. And I remember just feeling like I can't do this. And I said, oh, good luck with that. And I'm getting ready to leave. And she says, I have something I want you to have. And she went in the bedroom, and she came out with a manila envelope. And I went to take some papers out of the envelope, and she says, not yet, just take it. Okay, so I got in my car, went back to the drug house I was living in. And then when I got to the drug house, there was a naked guy in the living room on cannabinol. I just remember wanting to scream, like, I don't want you here, you need to leave. But when you are living in a drug house, it's not your house. Anybody understand that? You don't tell people to leave, So I remember just walking into my room, I threw that envelope down, and I'm just going to try to find a way to kill myself. And I don't have enough drugs. We just did a drug deal. That's what the money that was stolen was all about. And I didn't have enough drugs to kill myself. I'm not into pain. You remember the mattress when I jumped off the roof? Like I can't, I'm not a cutter. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to kill myself, and I find some syringes, and I'm just going to shoot air into my veins until my heart explodes. And I remember, I don't think you can do that, but that was my plan. And I turned around, and I saw the envelope on the bed. And I remember wanting to tear it up until my hands bled. I literally wanted to tear it up into a million pieces. Like, I don't care what you have to say anymore. I don't care what you want to tell me. I remember just wanting to just be done. And as I started to walk over there, God showed up. And I don't know if anybody's had God show up, but it was the first time in my life that I felt loved. First time I felt safe. And I remember just walking over there and feeling like I don't know what's happening, but I just felt safe. I felt loved. I felt like whatever's happening, it's going to be okay. And I heard the Holy Spirit say, take the papers out of the envelope. And not a voice, just an impression. And I walked over and took the papers out. I read them the best I could. And it was my mom's autobiography that she wrote in her social work program. And she wrote about her life. She had a life that her mom was alcoholic, gave her up to a number of times. She was raised by the same aunt that she sent me to in Canada, and then came over to the United States when she was 12. She hated Americans. Very prejudiced. And some Canadians are. She was very prejudiced. And she had 5 little Americans. I just have to say that sometimes. I just think that's so funny. But anyhow, so I'm reading this about my dad and the molest with us, the alcoholism with us, the domestic violence, my stepdad and his drinking, all of the stuff that's going on, all the kids that she kept having. And on the 3rd page, on the top of the 3rd page, it said the only reason I survived my life at all is I took my anger and hatred out on my 2nd child, and I ruined her life. I remember for the first time feeling like somebody told the truth. For the first time. And I heard God say, this was not about you. And I thought, what do I do now? And I started crying because I just felt like I heard him say, this was not about you. And he said something else that was, I thought, he said, if you trust me, I could change everything. And I thought, what are you going to change? I'm strung out on heroin. I can barely read. I have warrants for my arrest. I live in a drug house. And I remember just saying to God, look at me. Just look at me. And so I heard the Holy Spirit say, do you want me to tell you who I see when I look at you? And it was frightening to me because I thought, if I know this much about myself, and I really believed I was communicating with God, what is he going to show me? Is he going to show me something worse? Like, I don't think I could handle anything worse right now. And so he said again, can I show you what I see when I look at you? And I started crying. And he showed me who I am the day after resurrection. Not the day after I pull a needle out of my arm. Not the day I get into recovery, but the day after. I'm standing on the sea of glass, clothed in light and completely loved, completely innocent. And I just started weeping. I have never been loved. I have never been innocent. And I can't even imagine that. But if that's what you're saying, I will follow you the rest of my life. I remember thinking when God said, I will get you home, he was not talking about any place here. And I remember thinking, I will follow you the rest of my life. So now I'm standing there. I believe him. I think I've been crying for a few hours by that time. And I believe him. And I feel like we should get out of here. I wanted to tell God, you're in a drug house. That's the funniest thing to me. I took God out the window so he didn't see the naked guy in the living room. But it was so crazy because God does his best work with naked men in the living room. I mean, I just think that we think God's too offended to work with people that are real crazy. He works with the craziest folks. But anyhow, so I went out the window. Now I have to figure out a way to literally get into recovery, some place to stay. All I know is drug dealers, prostitutes, and people that are really crazy. And I called the only person I thought that was almost normal. He just didn't do drugs. He was probably had some pretty intense addictions, but it wasn't drugs. I called him and I said, do you know any place I can go to recover? And he said, well, my sister's a Christian. And I'll try to, am I supposed to be done right now? Can I go a little bit more? Okay. So his sister's a Christian. I'll call her and see if you can come over her house, right? And so he called her, and I don't know why she said yes. That to me, to this day, I'm just shocked about that. But she said yes, you can come over. So she lives in Placerville. I was in kind of LA. So I drive all the way to Placerville with no drugs. I mean, I got a carton of cigarettes, but no drugs, other drugs. And I drive to Placerville. I go to her house, and I knock on the door. And come up for a minute, because she's beautiful like you. Come up. Yeah. So I go to her house. She opens the door, and she says, I'm so glad you're here. I just want you to know I love you. And I remember just being furious. Like, what are you going to give me, a Christian track or something? I remember just feeling like nobody's ever loved me. You don't even know me. I love you. So I remember just being angry at her. Like, what are you saying? Because you don't even know me. Like, and I was so angry. I wanted to tell her every single thing I ever did. So if she judged me one time, I was going to say, see, don't tell people you love them when you don't know them. But she told me to come in and go into the living room and relax. She was getting ready for the Sabbath. I didn't even know what that was, but she was getting ready. And so I'm sitting in the living room, and she puts some music on. And it's hymns by these two twin sisters. And I thought, that's the most irritating thing I've ever heard in my life. And so I said, I'm withdrawing, so I'm just edgy anyway. And I'm like, excuse me, but can you shut that off? Because I just don't know if I can listen to that. And she said, oh, you'll get used to it. And I thought, I hope not. I just hope not. And so I kept thinking, I just wanted to pick up I think it was a CD player. And I wanted to throw it across the room. I was just I just was irritated. So I thought, okay, I'll just get up. And I went in the kitchen and I said, hey, excuse me, but do you have any coffee? She said, no. Pepsi? Dr. Pepper? Chocolate? She said, no. And Papani, she says, I'm a vegan vegetarian. And I said, what is that? And she said, I don't eat anything that has a mother. And I said, I don't want to eat your mother. I just want some coffee. I just want coffee. What are you talking about? And I remember just wanting to scream, am I in hell? When you misbehave as much as I did, that's where you go, to a vegan vegetarian's house. I mean, that's where you end up. And so I'm thinking, this is nuts. And she says, would you like some water? No, she said lentils at first. She was cooking some lentils. You want some lentils? And I remember, who would eat that? I mean, it just looks nasty, right? So I'm thinking, no, I'm good. You want some water? And I said, I just can't stomach water. All the chlorine. And she said, do you drink alcohol? And I said, well, yeah. She said, did it take you a while to get used to that taste? And I said, yes. And she says, water's like that. I thought, okay. So she got me drinking water, eating cantaloupe, just doing whatever I could to just get my body kind of clean. She had me taking 5 showers a day to wash the drugs off my skin as I was sweating them out. She, at one point, after about, and I was telling her every story. I was still trying to, I watched a 13-year-old girl get murdered when I was kidnapped by the bikers after they raped and beat her horribly. And so I told her that whole story. I told her about me getting beat. thought it was funny to play Russian roulette with me, told her those stories. And I was just doing it to see if she judged me. I remember literally, I didn't feel the story. I wasn't sad by the story. I was just doing it to see if she judged me. And she would, about every 20 minutes, she would say something like, excuse me, but I have to go to the bathroom. And I said, okay, good, I'm going to go outside and smoke. So I would smoke, she would go to the bathroom. And we kept doing that, like literally 5 days of storytelling and just doing all this recovery stuff. And she would go to the bathroom and I would go smoke. And one day she came in and she said, the sun is shining, it's so beautiful outside, we need to go take a hike. And I said to her, you could take a hike. I'm withdrawing from drugs. I just wanted to say to her, like, can't you see I'm like withdrawing from drugs? And I am 23 years old. She's 1,000 years old. And literally, finally she just wouldn't take no for an answer. So we're hiking up and down these hills. She is not having a hard time at all, and I can hardly breathe. And at one point, I say I can't go any further. And so I sit down, and she's going to go up a little ways and then come back and get me, and we're going to go back to the house. And I'm sitting there, and I just start crying, like, God, what am I thinking? Like, I can't even go through withdrawals. I can't get through this. And I'm just having a hard time. And so I literally, I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there, like, just whining. Like, I really am just whining about stuff. And all of a sudden, about right here, a bluebird lands. And I know, but you can't whine when a bird lands right by you. I mean, so I'm like, he's messing up my whole like whining thing. So I want to say, what are you doing? And he's preening himself, doing that. And I just thought, I could reach out and touch this bird, and he doesn't even look afraid. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? And finally I said, God, what's that bird doing? And why isn't that bird afraid of me? And he said, because I take care of that bird, and I will take care of you. And I just started crying again. Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I have been strung out for years. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to put my foot. I don't know if I'm going to survive this recovery stuff. And she comes back. We go back to the house, and we kind of do the same thing. I tell her stories. She goes out and goes to the bathroom. I go out to smoke. And at the end of the next week, what she says to me is, what's the worst thing you ever did? And I never wanted to tell anybody that, because I was just ashamed. And I said, when I was about 10, or maybe 9, it was 10 because I was in Canada. And I was meeting all my cousins in Canada. So they had a barbecue for everybody. And so they put all the little kids together in one room. And the adults stayed up later. And they were out doing barbecue. Some were drinking, that kind of thing. And we heard someone walking towards the room. And we were supposed to be asleep. They put us to bed, and we were supposed to be asleep. And it was one of my uncles. He came in, saw that we were all asleep, came in, molested me, and then left. What he didn't know is nobody was asleep. We were all kids, nobody said anything. And I knew that even in Canada, I couldn't pretend I was anybody but that kid. And I remember just feeling the shame of that. And so I was talking about the most shameful thing I ever did was that night. And I turned around and she was crying. And I said, what are you crying about? And she said, you didn't do anything. None of this was your fault. And I remember, and people think that people have heard that before. I had never heard that before. It was not your fault. If somebody would have if you could have chose, I want this loving family without all this stuff, or I want the family I have, which would you choose? And I thought I would want to be loved, I would want to be cared for. I would want to be safe. And she said, I just want you to know this was not your fault, and I'm so sorry for the things that happened to you. And she just held me. And I think it was the first time I've connected with another human being in a way that was safe. So I've had that encounter with God. Now I have this encounter with this woman. And as soon as I did, I just think Christians are hysterical. Because as soon as I had that encounter with her, she went like this, and a Bible slid out from her sleeve. I'm like, how do you guys know when to do that? It was like on cue. But anyhow, so she told me the story about David and Bathsheba and all the different things that David ended up killing Bathsheba's husband, and that God forgave him. And it took all of this depression before he asked God for forgiveness. And so I listened to the story, and I thought, man, that's a cool story. And then she told me the story about a woman that was dragged naked to the feet of Jesus, and she was going to be stoned to death for sleeping with someone. Raise your hand if you would have been stoned. No, I'm sorry. But she would have been stoned to death, right? And so to me, the story was pretty interesting, that she's in front of Jesus, she's naked, and she said, Donna said, that Jesus bent down and just started writing in the sand. And he wrote the sins of every man that was in the circle with the stone ready to kill her. And he wrote his story and his sin and his life. And that he said that one that has no sin, throw the first stone. And no one threw it. People dropped their stones and walked away one by one. And I don't know why that got me so much. It got me for a couple ways. That people a lot of times will think that Mary or the naked girl was what got me. But what got me is that Jesus, if Jesus is God, he didn't shame anyone, even in the circle. And I thought, what if we have a God that's not out to shame us? He's not out to call our sins out. He's not out to make us feel rotten or horrible or any of that stuff. And I thought I could trust a God like that, because I'm so afraid if anybody looks at some of the stories that I don't tell, would I be even invited to be in the same building with you? And so I just thought, God is not going to do that to me ever. And I remember thinking that was incredible. I want to end with the next story she told me. She told me that there was a guy in a cemetery, and he was just crazy. And he was the guy that would beat people up. He raped. He was so bad, they chained him up. They sent him out of town. People said he was just crazy. And I thought, well, what happened to that guy? And the whole time I'm asking her what happened to that guy, I just want him to be skinned alive. Like, I want body parts to be removed. I am thinking, I really want to hear that story, because I've been damaged by a lot of people in my life. And so she said, did I tell you he was ugly? Well, you did. What happened to him? I want to hear the good part. I want to hear what God does to him. So Jesus gets out of the boat, walks up to him. Everybody else runs because the guy is so crazy, but Jesus walks up, and the guy comes up and cusses him out. And I thought, I think I dated that guy. Have you ever been in a car, and raise your hand if you have, been in a car like you're doing a drug deal, it's 2:30 in the morning. There's a lot of people, that their eyes are this big, everybody in the car, and you get pulled over. And the driver says to the police officer, hey, what did you pull me over for? And we're all thinking, you shut up, we're going to be in prison by the end of the night. Like, what is wrong with you? And I thought, that's that guy. Or the guy that killed the girl at the camp meeting. That literally, I've seen that guy, and I think I have dated that guy. And she's telling the story about those guys don't exist. And I thought, they do exist. And I want someone to pay. I want that guy to pay. And I remember the only thing I wanted is to hear the good part of that story. And she said at one point, God, Jesus, said to him, he pulled out 1,000 demons. I think that's addictions and demons and all that kind of stuff. And pulled out 1,000 demons, walked him down to the water, cleaned him up, and he was in his right mind for the very first time. No, I said, that's not fair. What is that about? Because I want him to pay. What happened? I didn't hear him say, I'm sorry. I didn't hear him say, you know what, I've been a bad guy. I'm sorry about all that. I didn't mean any of that. I wanted him to say something. And she's just going on smiling as if that was enough. And she said, finally, most people don't talk about this part of the story, but his addiction and his damage wouldn't even let him speak. And his heart cry was, please don't leave me like this. Please help me. And that Jesus responded to the heart of this guy, because he couldn't even ask for help. And then I think I was won over, that we have a God that won't shame us. We have a God that knows our heart better than we know our heart. And we have a God that will not walk away from us. And I remember telling her, I need I need to know more about who God is. And so literally, I told her what happened at the drug house, that I had met God. I didn't want to tell anybody that because I thought somebody was going to say, oh, you're probably frying on acid or something. You were probably just high. I was not just high. And raise your hand if you've had an encounter with God where you feel like he's impressed you with something. It is the most incredible thing to know that God himself saw you even briefly. But I was afraid that somebody would pull that away from me, so I didn't tell anyone. But when I told her, she was really clear. And it was clear about what I needed to do next. She said, you need to learn to read better. You need to find a church, and you need to find God. And I was 23 years old. I was cute as. I just got to tell you, I was pretty cute. But I ended up going to church, and I went in with a little mini skirt, little lace top, all the jewelry I owned because I wanted to impress everyone. And I went into the most conservative church on the planet, and literally like, woohoo, just met God. And I remember the look I got was, you might want to go to a Pentecostal church. The look I got was just so funny. And I remember thinking, for a moment, I don't have anywhere else to go. Please let me sit down. And I felt like that cry was even more so. Can I sit down? And I remember feeling really clearly like I could not. I was smoking probably 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I smelled like a cigarette. I sat next to a vegan vegetarian that was allergic to the entire planet. And so, like, her throat is closing up, just like, and I didn't know it was my cigarette smoke that was offending her, but I felt her scoot away. So not only could I not sit down, nobody was talking to me really. I didn't fit. Somebody said, does anybody have a Bible? So somebody put me into a Revelation seminar class. I could barely read. And so everybody said, we're going to study Revelations. And so I just went like, okay, I'm ready. And they said, no, Revelations. And I said, no, I'm ready. Revelations. And I thought I might be on the wrong page. So I went to the middle of the Bible. Okay, now I'm ready. No, Revelations. And I remember thinking, don't make me hit you in the face. I said I was ready. And I just wanted to say, please stop that. And I didn't know how to really read. I didn't know anything about the Bible. And to put, like, all of a sudden I'm in a Revelation class, and I am offensive to everyone. I remember when I finally thought, after a little while, maybe the cigarettes was what offended people. So I will spray myself with perfume before I walked in. And I have to say, very cheap perfume, because I don't have any money. So now I came in smelling like cigarettes and very cheap perfume, and I try to sit down. And it was so interesting, because I remember, again, having that scooting away. And so we're going to talk about this next couple days, we're going to talk about just when you reach out to someone that is got the trauma. I had so much trauma. God is still, he's worked over the years with me with little things, some things I couldn't face. Even the bad seed thing I didn't deal with until I was 33 years old. I got into recovery at 23 years old. So literally 10 years before I could even know that that was a lie. So God is very gentle and very slow with us. But when we start working with people that have trauma and have addiction, I promise you, they need love and acceptance. They need to know, instead of what's wrong with you, is they need to know what happened to you, right? And sometimes we don't want to ask those questions. But if we start judging somebody like, what's wrong? Like, why do you always do whatever? It's like, instead of being that harsh with someone, it's what happened? What can we do to help? Like, tell us a little bit about who you are, that kind of thing. And so there's ways to deal with trauma that is more effective, and there's ways to heal that's more effective. And you know the most important way for someone to heal? Let them sit next to you. Connect. And connection is the biggest thing. I have very few people in my life that I know that I could go over to their house anytime I want. And because I travel internationally now, I have people all over the world that I can go over their house. Julie, could I stay at any room in your house? Anytime. Anytime I want. There's people that I know that that's true for, is anytime. I could show up at 3:30 in the morning, and she might be a little grouchy, but she would open the door. But you know what's really interesting is that connection and having our doors open and having someone know that they, like when you teared up and held me, I can't even tell you how healing that was. There's something very healing about that kind of thing. And it's not magic, and it's not anything that we got to be trained for. But when Jesus said, love one another, because he knows that that's what's going to heal us. We can educate ourselves. We could be more trauma-informed. We can literally know how to talk with each other. But when we actually touch each other, when we literally allow the other person to know that you're okay with me, right? I may not be perfect, but you can sit down. You know, that kind of thing is just amazing. Before we close, does anybody have a question? Comment? My dad died in a crack house. Finally, my dad literally died in a crack house. He was a perpetrator and really, really sick guy. And my stepdad died riddled with cancer because of his addiction. And I was so sad when he was dying. I went to the hospital and just held him. And the only thing that he was worried about is they were going to send him home for hospice care. And he said, well, what about my morphine? So he was just stoned all the way to the time that he died. And what's sad to me about that is we can all heal from any addiction anytime. It's not easy. Any trauma, anytime. Not easy. But that's what God has given me, the ability to heal. And I wish I could say, man, I'm really normal today. It would be a lie. But, you know, it's like even when something comes up and God shows me another thing to work on, he's very gentle. You know, he's very gentle about that. We have a new television program on 3ABN called Celebrating Life, Healing Beyond Trauma. And that is probably my most, the thing that I'm most passionate about, neurochemistry and addiction and healing beyond trauma. But I think that God has just taken one step after another. For me to even let someone move into my space and trust that, he did that because he taught me to trust myself. I don't need to trust someone else. I need to trust myself, that I'm an adult and I will always be okay. Well, unless there's a psychopath in front of me, maybe. But you know what I mean? I'm always going to be okay, so I can trust myself. It's not about you anymore. And that was very healing to me. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff this weekend. Any questions before we stop? Yes, sir.
Did you go back to school?
I did. I ended up learning to read and then went into a nursing program and then did 15 years of inpatient psych. And then I didn't want to give out that many medications, so I started my own nonprofit and have been doing that for 35 years. Okay. Yeah. But going to school was the best thing for me, because I thought because I was illiterate that I was very ignorant. And in school, they were teaching us how to do psych testing on people and those kind of things. And one of the tests they'd had us do to each other as students was an IQ test. And my IQ was pretty high, and I thought, no, you got to have that wrong. But it was really fun to know that I wasn't stupid. I was illiterate for sure. But even that, I had, like, sometimes you have to come against everything that you think you know and allow God to heal you, because God will show you 1,000 ways where what you know is a lie, and we can't change until we accept that maybe I believed a lie. But thanks for asking that.
I was just kind of curious because you have developed
What's
your own program.
Yeah. Thank you. And that one of the instructors I had, there were 85 of us students that started, and only 8 of us graduated, because they had a high passing for the state boards. But he would take you individually and find out what your need was. And what he found out my need was, I never told him my background, but my need was that I had no confidence in myself. And so he was very gentle and worked on that. Another person need was different than mine, but I mean, he worked with each one of us and got us through that program. I loved working inpatient. I probably had the hardest time with, I'm not anti-medications, but I had the hardest time with giving the amount of medications that I had to give and not being able to pray with somebody. I worked in a secular hospital, and sometimes prayer is what works. And I remember almost losing my job a few times because I prayed with someone. So I was asking God to help me with that. I've written about 5 books now. I have a number of television shows, because my only gift really is that I never shut up. So God said, let's do something with that. But any other questions? Yes? What about my mom? My mom, for a while, not too long ago, thought I was her favorite. It was weird. I let her think that, and actually even felt maybe what it felt like to be someone's favorite. But she no longer feels that way. She's not in the best health, but she's still alive. And I see her frequently. Huh? Yeah, there's hope. And that's what God's doing. My sisters and I are well, I know you guys are probably tired. Can I say one more story? So my younger sister, the meth addict, I'm going to visit my mom. My mom's sick. And no, it wasn't my mom sick. Her brother just died, and that was her last living relative. And so I want to make sure she's all right. And she doesn't talk to anybody, right? So my younger sister, the meth addict, picks me up at the airport. Never let a meth addict drive you from the airport. She is the craziest driver ever. And anyhow, so she picks me up, and I tell her, can we go to Costco? Because I want to get some super greens, because I like to have green drinks in the morning. And so I get some bananas and super greens and stuff. And so she says, okay. So we go to Costco. I get super greens and some fruit, and I put them in my basket, and I go through that self-checkout line. And my sister is 65 pounds, and all her teeth are rotted, and her chin is rotted. So she doesn't have, she looks like a meth addict that's been doing meth for years. And so anyhow, so we're in the self-checkout line, and my Costco card doesn't work. But it should, no matter what state you're in. So I said to my sister, can you get the girl that's supposed to be helping at this self-checkout line? But when a meth addict asks for help, they treat them differently. So she asked for help, and the girl looked at my sister like, whatever, like, I'm not helping you. And so then she saw me, and I look more normal. So you could tell she's sorry about having that reaction. So she comes over, she shows me how to use the card, and she walks away. And I try my card again, it doesn't work again. So I thought, Joni, get her attention again. So she gets her attention again, and she comes over, and let's say this is a cart. She puts her hand on the cart, and she looks at me, and she said, are you a Christian? And I said, I am. And my sister says, I can't tell you the word she uses, because she talks pretty foul. But so my sister says, how the F does she know that? And I said, I don't know. So I just said, yes, I'm a Christian. And she said, she teared up. And she said, I'm going to court Thursday, and I'm scared. Will you pray for me? And I said, yes. But don't shut your eyes, because you're at work. So just give me your hands. And I looked in her face, and we prayed about fear and about the fact that God's hand's on you and all the things that we needed to pray. And then I let go of her hand, and I said, no, until Thursday when you go to court, I'll pray for you every day. Just know that. And so my younger sister, the meth addict, comes out. We finally get the card. The card works right away after that. So the card works, and so we're walking out, and my sister said, why would she ask you that? You don't have a Christian shirt on. You don't have a Christian hat on. You don't have a cross around your neck. Like, what just happened? And I said, well, I think it was the super greens. So she said, that's the most ridiculous thing. So everybody that came over my mom's house, my sister told that story and witnessed to everybody. So now my sister's starting to get in recovery. My other sister, the stripper, she's so funny. And you know, my other sister, the stripper, she walks like a stripper. Like she'll come up and she'll say, well, how are you today? And I thought, nobody stands like that, Cindy. But anyhow, so she's literally, when I go over her house now, she said, do you want me to put that Christian station on? And I'm thinking, why would you do that for me? Like, I've been clean since 1979. I've been a Christian since 1979. And this is the first year that my sister said, would you like me to put that Christian station on for you? So I think that God is very faithful and still works with people. And when I think, does God love me more than he loves my stripper sister? I don't think so. I think that we have those kind of things that we do, but until our last breath, I think God is trying to get us home. So thank you for letting me talk about myself and my family, and I'm so glad to be here. So no more questions? Okay, can I have the pastor say a prayer for us? All right.
All right, let's pray together. God in heaven, thank you for your story and Cheri. Thank you for the testimony. Thank you for reminding us that you are crazy about us and that you are always with us. Even at times we don't even realize you are by our side. Thank you for your love, your mercy. And I just pray that tonight, even as we go back to our homes and as we return tomorrow, that you would use this time to do your good work in each of us individually because you do care. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Tomorrow we'll see you again. Church service starts at 11. Cheri will be speaking. Lunch, and then 2 o'clock again. If you want to come up and speak with Cheri, she'll be here for a little bit.
And you know what I have to say is that somebody asked me if they could hang out with me individually. I love that. I mean, I just love that. So if somebody feels like they want to do that, just come. If you want to come up like after the meetings and we're just going to sit around and talk as a group, that's fine. So just know that I think me being up here talking by myself is not as fun as talking with you guys.
Thanks, everybody.